Okay, let's look at the next assignment, assignment 2-3. This assignment is going to focus more on some three-dimensional aspects to it to create something that's highly visually interesting, I believe. So let me share my screen real quick. Um, yeah, desktop. So here you should be seeing my browser. Here at week 5, the week of the craziest winter storm I've ever experienced in Texas in my life. Um, we were supposed to focus mostly on 3D materiality. So in this, if we look at the overview, just let it go there. You'll see an example as to like what we're going to be kind of proceeding with in terms of our assignment, and I'll explain how it gets to this kind of point. But our objectives this week were to identify and apply the elements of art, form, and mass, differentiate between two-dimensionality and three-dimensionality, describe the concepts of relief sculpture, which I definitely explained in the last video, construct a two-dimensional painting into 3 separate organic shapes, transform two-dimensional imagery into three-dimensional relief sculpture, judge how the studio art practice and conceptual ideas of this unit of study can be integrated into future learning and teaching. Um, so here's a video that you can watch on your own time that further explains the element of form, just kind of further goes into three-dimensional art and how that um, is used within these practices. So assignment 2-3, what we're doing is we're taking our abstract landscape and creating a relief wall sculpture with it. So using your 3 abstract landscape paintings that you uh, will be turning in today, which is Thursday, February 18th, you will transform them into one abstracted relief wall sculpture. All right. Just because the relief sculpture is being made out of your landscape painting does not mean it has to be a recognizable landscape too. It can be a non-objective piece. After I explain this assignment, I will explain what non-objective means, as well as other types of visual art, such as representational art and what that means, and abstract what that means. So the objective of this assignment, at the end of this lessons, the students will demonstrate they understand the element color by being able to identify and apply the elements of form and mass, differentiate between two-dimensionality and three-dimensionality, describe the concept of a relief sculpture, construct two-dimensional painting into separate organic shapes, and transform two-dimensional imagery into three-dimensional relief sculpture. All right. The things you'll need for this would be an X-Acto knife or something similar like a scalpel. You can use scissors for this, but just be aware scissors might be a bit difficult to cut through the cardboard. Um, but give it a try if it's something that you have around and available. Um, X-Acto knives are not very expensive at the art store or any craft store in your area. You'll need the 3 cardboard landscape paintings from assignment 2-2, hot glue gun or a glue stick, and Velcro strips or even anything else that might be able to hang the work. Try not to use wall pins. Try not to do anything to puncture the artwork to hang it on the wall. Let's have something that we can hide behind the piece in order to hang this. All right. And something to note: once this assignment's completed, when you're taking a photo of it, definitely have it hanging on the wall so we can see what it looks like on the wall rather than just laying flat on the surface of the table. Also, if you need towards the end of this project, by next Tuesday, bring it to class. If you want some advice in terms of hanging it, we can talk about it also in class on Tuesday. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut around each of your painted shapes in your three abstract landscape paintings with the X-Acto knife. You can take some liberties with the color shapes if you like. Make sure some cutouts are large and some are small. Make an arrangement. Um, Once you have the whole collection of paint cutouts, begin to arrange them on your tabletop. Allow them to overlap and create a single oddly shaped composition. All right. Uh, uh, then glue them to each other that in a configuration with a hot glue gun or glue stick if you don't have a hot glue gun. And once the glue is dry, apply a strip of Velcro to the back near the upper portion to hang your project on the wall. If you have a better or more readily accessible method of hanging the work, you may use it, uh, but you'll be responsible for its success. All right. Again, since we didn't have class this week, bring in the class Tuesday. If you're confused in terms of how to hang this thing, we could come up with a solution together. All right. Uh, and document your work through photographs and submit. All right. So here are some examples from students from last semester in terms of their outcomes. Uh, so here's one that's abstract, still kind of fits the idea of landscape, but still there's some liberties to it that make it feel very original and different from a landscape. Uh, uh, yeah, I think one way that we associate this with the landscape is just having the blue here at the top and then the green and undulating like hills and such at the bottom. It becomes very surreal in a sense, and it's super visually appealing. I don't think having a hang-in device such as this is something I want y'all to do. Again, I don't. Let's try not to see our hang-in device if we can. All right. Um, Here's another one. You can see that they maybe had this influence of plants and such, or even underwater environments. So we can see that the bottom is of these like bluish like shapes. And then we can see these like green shapes kind of popping from the top, kind of growing in a sense. Here, I like this due to the fact that it doesn't feel very confined. It feels like it can grow outward in any form or fashion. I like the fact that this artist is kind of utilizing some of the bigger pieces up as its like first layers, and then building up to some of the more smaller pieces to create these kind of really expressive sort of movements around the surface. This is fantastic too. Rather than like keeping areas all closed off, the artist is revealing the wall behind it in different parts of the piece around the center area. So kind of framing the wall in a sense with, these abstracted shapes all around. The outcome can be very much however you think you want to approach it. Let's try to make it feel like it's growing outward. This try to make it feel very organic and not so sustained within the traditional rectangle that they are in their current state. And just try to be creative, as best as you can to create this relief sculpture. Some things I was you can consider too if you want to add textures, and if you know ways to add textures to some of the surfaces, maybe not all the surfaces, but maybe a few shapes here and there, you're more than welcome to do that. Also, ways to really enhance the relief aspect of it. Maybe layering cardboard underneath shapes to really push them push your shapes like off the wall even further. So maybe you have three of these shapes under this to kind of raise it up from the shapes that it sits on, to really give this piece some depth also. So think about that when making this. I'm excited to see, the outcome of these. There's been some very great outcomes in the past. So, try to be as creative as you can. Let's see. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into some slides here real quick. So let's look over types of visual arts. So there are three types of visual art and terms that you can use to kind of describe the work that you're looking at. I've used many terms. I'm going to put my head somewhere, maybe in the middle here. I use many terms such as abstraction in this class, at times representational as well, um, to kind of describe some of the work of art that we're doing. Reasons I'm kind of moving into this as well is because we are uh, creating an assignment where we're taking something that is representational and using processes to move it into a more abstract format. All right. So here's three images to give you an idea of what each of these terms kind of mean. Um, and we'll kind of get into detail here in the next few slides. But I have Felice House here, who is an artist that currently resides in Austin, who makes paintings of women, mostly of Western setting. Um, and then we have Juan Gris, who's a Cubist artist from the early 1900s. And then we have Kazimir Malevich, who was a Bauhaus. No, dang, I'm losing it. He was of the Bauhaus, like back in the early 1900s as well, and part of also the avant-garde, such as Juan Gris, of artists who in the modern art era who really kind of changed the trajectory of art and how we look at art today. So representational art. So representational art is artwork that aims to represent actual objects or subjects from reality. All right. So anything that is representational, when we look at it, we can familiarize with it. We can recognize things uh, um, at various degrees. All right. So we have a piece here by Duran. He is of the Romanticist movement. The Romanticism art movement uh, is one of like the first periods that emphasize like individuality of artists. Uh, Artists really kind of sunk in like emotion into their paintings. Duran was part of the Hudson River School, which are a group of artists who painted uh, the American landscape. Um, they made these paintings that would like capture like the vastness of the American landscape, and kind of showed human integration into these landscapes and kind of changing them as we kind of colonize, what we call now like the United States. These paintings were usually big to really kind of emphasize that vastness, kind of mural size, sort of paintings. Here, Durand is, we can recognize two human figures within this piece. We can recognize the landscape itself, the atmospheric perspective, which is the way the colors kind of become lighter as they move back into the horizon. This gives the piece a sense of this illusion of space that feels truly believable, as if we can just walk into it. a really fantastic painting, to say myself. Um, this is a piece by Claude Monet. He was part of the he was part of the impressionist movement that took place in France. Uh, the impressionists focused mostly on moments in time. They were so they really try to capture like a specific moment that they wanted to paint. What they would do is they would go study like the effects of light at different times of day on like different subjects and landscapes, and really try to capture that moment uh, really quickly through. Uh, 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 and one thing that they were inspired by were like kind of the framing of new technologies such as photography during this time. Um, their brushstrokes were highly evident within these paintings, and they often use like bright colors. This piece, uh, at the time this piece was painted, it was pretty controversial through its through because people didn't really feel like it represented or was representational enough. This kind of leads into the idea of abstraction just a bit, but still stays representational because there is many aspects of this painting that are familiar. We could see, two human figures on a boat and other boats that also occupy some figures. We could tell that, like in the horizon area, there is like factories, there is land. Uh, this is also recognizable by the fact the sun is just above, this horizon in the sky. We can see the factories, that are present within this time. This was a time where industrialization became this sort of revolution where new technologies were being made. Even oil paint tubes was like a new thing, during this time where artists had their oil paints in tubes and they can easily carry their paints like to the spots that they wanted to paint. Um, Reasons this was controversial was because of its like very uh, uh, because the imagery was so broken up. The abstracts were the brushstrokes were very evident. This is something that hadn't been seen, up until this time. People were more aware and used to paintings such as this that were very traditional, very recognizable. Modern art pissed a lot of people off during their time. But over time, they paintings and movements started to become accepted, and which is why we have so many different types of of disciplines and techniques that we see today. Abstraction is more of obscuring the subject and content, but still can relate to something concrete. All right. So that being said, like something can be unrecognizable, but if the title represents something that is concrete or something that is familiar, we would refer to it as an abstraction because our minds we start to associate with that title. So if I see something that isn't recognizable on painting, but the title is called A Cat, then my mind starts to associate a cat to the painting, and it becomes something more concrete and easier to like comprehend in a sense. This is a piece by Kandinsky. He is one of the first artists to explore abstraction in the modern art period. He exploited the evocative interrelation between like color and form to create an aesthetic experience that engaged the sight, sound, and emotions of the public. Uh, he really wanted to have this sort of visceral feel on the way we perceived his work. He's known for work in the process of synesthesia. So he literally saw colors when he heard music, and he heard music usually when he painted. And so this association to music, something that feels very concrete, makes this thing pretty comprehensible in terms of the way we look at it through the colors, through the rhythm, and so forth. He also believed that total abstraction offered the possibility for profound transcendental expression, and that copying from nature only interfered with this process. So he wanted his work to be nothing else but about the emotion within it. Some other aspects of this painting too that that we can relate to are some of, if we really look closely, we could see some familiar things going on. We can see a landscape in a sense, the hills, that are kind of formatted here at the bottom portion of the piece that move up to like kind of the top portion, and then separated is this area here that maybe resembles sky, and some abstractions of simple lines that kind of create these abstractions of birds as well. Other forms of abstractions, uh, uh, um, here, so this is another form of abstraction, and this was an artist that we might all be familiar with, which is Pablo Picasso. Although we can recognize and familiarize with, the subjects that are in this painting, Picasso really obscures these subjects, really changes their shapes to resemble something that is almost like kind of broken apart. Uh, but since we can still familiarize with it, um, we would call this an abstraction, and I'll explain why I keep saying this. This will be in relation to the next term that we go over in the next slide. So we can see musical instruments that are being held by the musicians in this piece. All elements that create the figures within this are broken up into like organic and geometric shapes. But there are many moments that we can recognize and familiarize with this scene without taking out the experience the artist is trying to like portray. I love the dog here too, like the shadow of the dog and his feet under this table. And I just wanted to put this here too to kind of give you a nice scale as to like the size of this painting as well. So non-objective art. This is a term that describes types of abstract art, including abstract sculpture. But this is wholly devoid of any reference to the natural world. So abstract art can't have a reference to the natural world. It can have a reference or relate to something concrete that gives us all these associations to that reference that we can like help in terms of into comprehending what the piece is about. When it comes to non-objective art, uh, those associations are taken away from us. All right. We can see that here in this piece by Georgia O'Keeffe, which is called Black Abstraction. So she's pretty much letting this be what it actually is. She's creating these two large black shapes that interlock with one another, that create this sort of like really nice composition. She's creating form through the use of light to give these things kind of an illusion of depth in a sense. Uh, uh, they feel very massive and heavy just due to their color. Uh, but simply, she just names it Black Abstraction without any association to anything, whether that be in a landscape, a body, whatever, you name it. Some would say not all would say this, but that Kandinsky has made uh, uh, Kandinsky was kind of a pioneer towards non-objective like art. But personally, like I do not believe like his all his work uh, is not objective in a sense, since his work still evokes like an emotion. A lot of times, non-objective artists tend to try to like take away that emotion, try to take away these visceral responses to where we're only focusing on the shapes, the elements that make up the painting. Non-objective artwork usually takes out, uh, sorry, again, is driven by the elements and principles of design. Materiality like at its purest form. This is a piece by Ellsworth Kelly. It's just simply called Green, Blue, Black, and Red. And, we're here to just really kind of view and appreciate just the simplicity of like the shapes, the minimalist aspect of it. Uh, Ellsworth Kelly, in this process, is he usually doesn't like provoke this, with his pieces, but typically he does get his inspiration from nature itself, but simplifies it in a way that we cannot recognize anything anymore. So this piece could be an influence by something he saw just randomly, like maybe in his studio, where he saw maybe these four shapes in these specific colors to create, and then to have inspiration to kind of create this piece. So, I just wanted to go through these to kind of give you a sense of each of these terms, how they're represented within the art world, how they're used on different types of paintings. Again, representational usually represents objects and subjects from reality, things we're familiar with. Abstraction, abstract art usually obscures those things to create more simpler shapes or obscure versions of what things that we're familiar with, but they still associate to something tangible. All right, and non-objective art is devoid of all of that reference to devoid of any reference to nature in general, and focuses on just the basic elements and principles uh, uh, as a way to kind of appreciate the work. Let's see. Let me try to. Oh, there we go. So I just wanted to go through that to kind of give you an idea of each of those terms. And just kind of the relationship between those terms and the assignment that we are working on. So do your best to get this assignment done. And I look forward to seeing them when they're completed by next Tuesday. I have at the end of week 5, a page that lists, that gives you a checklist of things to kind of get done. It's